You are welcome to today's class on English. We are continuing with idioms and meaning derivation. I'm very sure yesterday you enjoyed the practical sessions we did. Of course, we gave hints before the practical, looking at questions, practical questions drawn from past questions. Now, we're going to continue with looking at more questions. And so you have more to learn today. And obviously, this will go a long way to help you. Pay attention, please. Let's look at some questions now. Get them explained, look at the answers, and also explain why they are the answers. First, people are not interested in who rules. People are not interested in who rules. Now, what are the answers? Let's start with A. A. People are not ruled by the leaders they want. Is that what the sentence say? The sentence says people are not interested in who rules. So whoever becomes the person to rule, they are not bothered. Now that is not captured by the A answer. People are not ruled by the leaders they want. Now this sentence is in fact saying the opposite of what the sentence gives. This option is that they want, that means they are interested. And the sentence is telling us they are not interested. So we can eliminate A. Now we just quickly look at C and D. C says the rulers are not concerned about the people. That's C. D is people who rule are not interested in the rule. In the ruled. C and D are saying exactly the same thing. The rulers are not concerned about the people. The people who rule are not interested in the ruled. The ruled are the people that are ruled over. So C and D can be eliminated on that ground. Now, but of course, it also means that they are not saying what the sentence has. The sentence has something different, that these people are not interested in who rules. Now let's come to B. People are not concerned about who rules them. That is the fact what the sentence is saying, that they are not interested in who rules. So they are not concerned about who is going to be the ruler. So we take option B as our answer. This question is on meaning derivation. Now question number 2. It is always good to steer a middle course in whatever one does. It is always good to steer a middle course in whatever one does. Now, what do we have here? In this case, this question is not on meaning derivation, but it is an idiom, steering a middle course. Steering a middle course. Now, what is the meaning of this idiom? This idiom is to make compromise between two extreme courses of action. To make compromise between two extreme courses of action. This definition is drawn from Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. So, now if we take that, we can now start looking at our answers. Let's take A. It is always good to get midway in anything one does. That is sounding too literal to be an answer of the question. Middle course, midway, is like being in the middle, and that is sounding too literal. And remember, we are looking at two extremes, and then having to be to have compromise on that. So we cannot take A because one, it is too literal. It's like saying being midway. If you are doing two things, just be in the middle of it. So that can be our answer. We have to eliminate that. Now let's look at C. It is always good to move away from the forefront and maybe come to the middle. That again is sounding too literal. And remember the definition of the idiom is saying to make compromise between the two extreme courses of action. So it is not the issue of moving away from the forefront. And of course we need to make compromises. That is only when you take the middle course. That's the point. Not just being in the middle of everything. Okay? Now, D, it is always good to work very hard. This is way out of the question. This is way out. This is not the issue we're talking about. It's not the issue of hard work. Alright? And we now move on to B, move back to B. Alright, so B, it's always good to act in moderation. It's always good to act in moderation. Now, look at that. We're talking, the definition, remember, is to make compromise between two extreme courses of action. So you are not in the extreme, you are mediating a middle course, that is, you are being moderate, not to be extreme to the left, neither you are extreme to the right. So that calls for moderation when the person does things. So we take option B as our answer based on the meaning of the idiom steering the middle course. Question number 3. The witness said he had no axe to grind with his brothers. The witness said he had no axe to grind with his brothers. Options. He had no hatred for his brothers. That's A. B. He had no axe and therefore stole the machete. C. He had no axe and therefore buried the machete. And then D. He had no vested interest in the brothers. Now, what is the answer? Again, this question is on idiom. So we'll take the meaning of the idiom. That is the very thing to do. You have to know the meaning of the idiom before you begin to answer the question. But of course, even when you don't know the meaning, sometimes you still can answer the question. First, you watch out and remove literal meanings. Options that are based on literal meanings. You must not know every idiom before you are able to answer the question. Take note of that. Alright? But when you know the meaning of the idiom, it helps you more. There are some, without knowing the meaning of the idiom, it becomes very difficult for you to know the answer. The problem, we're going to provide you later with as many idioms as possible telling you the meaning of the idioms. But begin to have follow this practical session so that you can be guided on ways you can overcome problems, particularly if you meet idioms you don't know, how you can answer them, inform them correctly. So we'll look at that. The meaning of the idiom is to have no private reasons for being involved in something. To have no private reasons for being involved in something. This is drawn again from Oxford and Verse Learner's Dictionary. Okay, so having that at the back of our minds, we can now look at the options. He had no hatred for his brothers. Now, the meaning of the idiom is that having no private reason, or having, if you say you have an axe to grind, it means you have private reason for being involved in something. You are going to discuss things personal and that are your interest, So we can look at A. Although A seems to talk about the person's emotions, hatred, but it is not the issue of having vested interest in his brothers. So we have our doubts with A. Now we'll look at B. He had no axe and therefore stole the machete. This is way out literal. So remember what I told you about literal meanings. Most idioms do not get close to being literal in meaning. So we look at B and say, no, this obviously can be our answer. He had no axe, and of course remember the meaning of the idiom. Let's see. He had no axe and therefore borrowed the machete. That is still in the neighborhood of B. It's just that one is stealing and the other borrowing. So we remove C. And then we have D. He had no vested interest in the brothers. Go back to the meaning of the idiom, which says to have private reasons. That is, we have an axe. If you say you don't have any axe to grind, then to have no private reasons for being involved in something. So, if you say you have an axe to grind with his brothers, or the person has an axe to grind with the brothers, it means he has vested interest in the brothers. That becomes our answer to question number 3. Question number 4. The footballers moved with tails between their legs. This question again is on idioms. So this section, today's class, we have more idioms than You have more questions on idioms than on meaning derivation. So, the footballers moved with tails between their legs. The options are A, they moved happily because they won the match. Then B, they were unhappy because they had been despised by their opponents. And then C, they were ashamed because they had been defeated. And then D, they moved with tails between their legs. Now, what is the meaning of the idiom? Let's start from there once more. Meaning of idiom: moving with tail within between legs. Now, for someone to move with his tail between his legs means to be ashamed or depressed, e.g., after being defeated or spoken to severely. To be ashamed or depressed, e.g., after being defeated or spoken to severely. This again is drawn from Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. Now, with that at the back of our mind, then we can also picture the scenario of a dog. When you see a dog and its tail is between its legs, then you know that that dog is either afraid. That means, in most cases, it means the dog is afraid. That is, the dog is scared. Now, it gives you the picture of negative scenario or environment for the dog. So that can also help you to a large extent. But then, of course, the meaning we have for the idiom doesn't have to do with being afraid, okay? But that can help you to some extent. Now, we look at option A. They moved happily because they won the match. Based on the meaning of the idiom and the scenario I captured for you, we can't take A at all. That they were happy and that they won the match. No. Remember that it means being ashamed because or depressed, e.g., after being defeated or spoken to severely. And that capture this mini capture the scenario picture about the dog. The dog is afraid. That means that it's kind of depressed. Okay, and that is because it's been spoken to severely. I mean, the person is spoken to severely, or the person is defeated. Is that the dog? Whatever assailant that is making the dog to be afraid is obviously already defeating the dog. Something in that neighborhood. All right. So we'll take B. They were unhappy because they had been despised by their opponents. Now, based on the idiom, of course, they will be. The idiom can connote unhappiness, which is the issue of depression in the meaning of the idiom. And in that scenario created by the dog, of course, the dog, a scared person, is also an unhappy person to a large extent. But it is not because of being despised. Their happiness won't come because of being despised. All right. So we can therefore, based on the issue of the point of despise, eliminate B. Now let's look at C. Let's look at D rather. They moved with their tails between their legs. That is sounding too literal. Of course, we are talking about footballers who don't have tails. How can they then move with their tails between their legs? So we eliminate D. Now look at C and look at remember the meaning of the idiom. They were ashamed because they had been defeated. And remember the meaning of the idiom is to be ashamed or depressed, G, after being defeated or spoken to severely. You agree with me that the answer obviously is C. Question number 5 now. Question number 5 reads, the headmaster managed to talk his way out of having to give the speech. Now, what are the options? The options are he delivered a speech despite the difficulty. That's A. B. He managed to give a speech out of a difficult situation. C. He managed to get himself out of a difficult situation. And then D. He managed to talk on his way. Now, what is the meaning of the idiom before we pick our answer? We may also have to create a scenario to see how you can answer an idiom even when you don't know the meaning. So we take the meaning of the idiom. To talk one's way out means to avoid something by clever talking. To avoid something by clever talking. Drawn from Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. Now, having said that, now see a scenario where you have somebody in trouble and he is talking his way up, meaning that he's talking so much, using sweet talk in order to get out. That is the scenario you see when you look at this idiom. So if you can create that scenario, then of course you probably can to get the answer correctly. Now let's look at, based on the meaning of the idiom and the scenario created, let's look at option A. He delivered a speech despite the difficulty. This idiom means to avoid something. And obviously the something avoided according to the sentence is to give a speech. So if he avoided the speech, obviously he didn't give the speech. And here we're saying he delivered the speech. So that makes option A to be wrong. Now option B, he managed to give a speech out of a difficult situation. That is also wrong because of the fact that the sentence states that he gave a speech. No, so the sentence, what will have, that idiom means that he didn't give that speech, he avoided that speech. So option B is also out. Now let's look at option D. He managed to talk on his way. That is sounding literal. To talk one's way doesn't mean really talking on the way. And we're saying talking one's way out, not talking on the way. So based on that, option D is out. Now let's look at option C. He managed to get himself out of a difficult situation. Remember the meaning of the idiom that states to avoid something by clever talking. Now obviously when you want to, anything you want to avoid will be unpleasant or difficult and all that. So we see that he managed to get himself out, meaning avoided a difficult situation. This time, although we do not have what is the difficult situation that is giving the speech, it's not in this C, but at least it captures within the meaning of the idiom. So our answer is this option C. That is our answer. Did you follow the explanation? So we'll have C as the answer.